This channel is dedicated to helping you explore the West. This time we're going to Glacier National Park, and I'm presenting the very popular Highline Trail along the Garden Wall. At Granite Park, we'll connect to Swiftcurrent Pass and take it all the way to Many Glacier. Logan Pass is in the center of Glacier National Park. It's in the shadow of what's left of a peak that was sheared off by one of the park's namesake glaciers. Often the parking lot fills up by 7 a.m., but if you're lucky enough to get a spot, or if you take a red bus or a hiker shuttle to get here, you should take the Highline Trail. It begins just across the road from the Logan Pass sign. If you're in good shape, you can take it over 15 miles all the way to Many Glacier. But if that's too much for you, there are options. You can take it just 11.8 miles down to the Loop on the Sun Road. Or you can take it for just over 2 miles to a place I call my lunch spot. This short option has spectacular views, and because it's out and back, you don't have to arrange for transportation back to Logan Pass. I do at least one of these variations every single time I'm in the park. This segment includes images from several of my hikes. A signpost at the trailhead reminds us that this is bear country. There are more than 500 grizzlies in the park, and as the sign says, there is no guarantee of your safety. As recently as 2019, a man went missing on this trail. But anyway, here's some advice: don't hike alone. Hopefully I haven't scared you away from one of my favorite trails. So let's get started. Some of you are probably wondering how difficult these trails are. Well, my lunch spot is pretty flat after the drop at the trailhead, and it only takes a couple of hours. The 11-mile loop route will take 5 to 6 hours, and you should use hiking poles. They really help your knees on the 2,000 plus feet of descending. I've done all these routes, and even some of the spur trails I'm going to show you. The route we're on, the 15 miles to Many Glacier, it's a toughie. In the busy season, getting by can be quite tricky. So in the name of safety, the Park Service is considering making this a one-way only trail before something really bad happens. It can be scary for some, but there is a handy garden hose covered safety cable to hang on to. At least there is during the busy season. On this early October morning, it had already been stowed for the season. A little later in the morning, there is more sun on the trail and in the valley. And early on, the Sun Road is still within earshot. The cliff face is massive, but it's not until you get off the shelf and look back that you see just how big it is. But it's the view across the valley where you're most likely going to be looking. After just a few minutes, you're off the cliff face, and the trail opens up a bit. Bears aren't the only wildlife feeding here. Bighorn sheep do too. Across the valley, the 492-foot Bird Woman Falls comes into view. The trail cuts across the safety of a scree field. Then you're back in the trees where bear precautions are necessary. Some wear bells on their boots to let bears know that they're coming. But most rangers say they're not loud enough. Hey, bear. Talking, singing, and generally making noise is deemed the best way to let a bear know that you're coming. And then they usually get out of the way. Some of the smaller creatures in the park may come out in hopes that you'll toss them a crumb or two. But don't. It's best to keep wild animals wild. The trail continues along the garden wall. And by now, you can no longer hear the traffic. It's only natural to spend most of your time looking down the trail. But the view up is also impressive. This is a place where you're truly surrounded by the magnificence of Mother Nature. At this point, we're only about an hour out from Logan Pass. It's been a pretty easy stroll. And if you're not going the whole way, remember you can turn around at any point. You never know what you're going to see on the Highline Trail. Here, a mountain goat family grazes next to the trail. These goats may seem cute and docile, and most of the time they are. Like all wild animals, they are unpredictable, and it's best to keep your distance. This part of the trail is pretty flat and open, with fantastic views of the mountains on the other side of the valley. At a little over the 2-mile point, there's another grove of trees, beyond which there's a right turn onto another shelf that's been carved into the cliff face. This is my lunch spot. And if you don't have the time or the energy to do an entire trail, this is a great turnaround point. I call it my lunch spot because the notches in the cliff make excellent picnic spots. Even if you're continuing on, they're a great place to take in the McDonald Valley while resting up for the 275-foot climb up to the Haystack. This is also a great place to interact with other trail users. Most are friendly, but some will insist that you get out of their way. When you see hikers heading the opposite way, it's a good idea to ask them if they've seen anything interesting. One time, a couple told me there were bighorn sheep grazing in the clearing just a few hundred yards down the trail. Bighorn sheep are the symbol of the park, and it's a treat to see just one. And sometimes you're lucky enough to see several of them, doing what bighorn do. The open space and lush grass attract grazers, as well as their predators. On another hike, I nearly captured a grizzly hunting a mountain goat. It was a mama and her two cubs were nearby. Grazers think it's safer to be on rocky ledges, but seconds before I shot this video, this bear was chasing a goat. Bears are omnivores. That means they'll eat just about anything. They also can be territorial. This mama bear has cubs, and when she finds an area with plenty of berries, she'll defend it for her family. Luckily, these bears were about 1,000 feet above the trail, but they can run at 35 miles an hour, and I was glad it didn't start heading my way, because you need to remember that you're miles from the nearest road and hours away from any medical help. I was happy to see that they didn't come any closer. Luckily, this bear was just checking us out. The climb to the Haystack is up a 275-foot switchback. It only takes a few minutes to climb it. There's a little saddle up here, with a great view of the McDonald Valley. The ground is littered with rocks. Some of them are quite large. It's pretty close to the Continental Divide. The rocks either rolled down, but more than likely they were dropped by a glacier. This is a long hike, and except for the first time I did it, well, I didn't shoot any video on this part of the trail. So Google Earth to the rescue. But I did shoot some stills. And there is evidence of past forest fires. For about the next 3 miles, we're paralleling the Continental Divide. Trees become more plentiful as we near the halfway point. After the trail takes a turn, there's a welcome sight in the distance. That's Granite Park. It's our halfway point. Before we get there, there's a spur trail up to the Granite Glacier overlook. It's less than a mile long, but it goes up 1,000 feet. And it's rather steep. I went up there the time I did the shorter loop version of this trail. The slog up was brutal for me, but I made it. But there's a great view of Granite Glacier in the valley beyond. I did it late in the year when most of the bergs had melted. I quickly went back down, and I was quite happy to rest for a while at Granite Chalet. Granite Park is a collection of buildings that include the improperly named Chalet, with its rustic accommodations. You have to bring your own bedding and food. But the night sky is amazing. And reservations are incredibly hard to come by. There's also a store, and I was able to buy food and water, as long as I packed it out. If you're in better shape than me, you can hike another 2 miles and 1,200 feet of up to the Swiftcurrent Lookout, with one of the best views in the park. But that's not for me. I opted for a quiet table with a view. These buildings were built in 1914 and 15 by the Great Northern Railroad as a lodging site for their customers. After a short refueling stop, I headed for the pass. It's a 500 to 600 foot rocky climb to a pass that's usually pretty windy. And there's a nice view of Granite Park below. Though I don't think that's why the bighorn were there. And no, I wasn't stupid enough to get that close to him. That's somebody else. After about 3/4 of a mile, I'm at the highest point of the day. It's about 7,200 feet at the pass. And I was feeling it. From here, the trail drops 2,300 feet, most of it in the first 2 miles. If you're new to hiking, you may be surprised to learn that going downhill is harder on the joints. I'll use some of the old footage to illustrate. That was very close, hurt my right knee. I twisted it, but it was okay. But I had 5 or 6 more miles to go. And the next one drops 2,300 feet with several switchbacks down Swiftcurrent Pass. Perhaps due to being tired or my painful knee, well, I was in need of a boost. And I got one. Tiredly? I'll explain. Well, that's what I came to see. This view. And I was tired. Didn't expect that last bit of up, 500 feet or so of up. But the view is beginning to be there. And I can't wait to get a little further down the road. Feeling better, heart rate's getting back down to 125. Nice cool breeze in my back. Sunny, it's a good day. After 9 miles, I'm coming up to the view I've come to see. It's amazing. I'm at over 7,000 feet, looking 2,000 feet down a valley that was carved by a glacier 12,000 years ago, leaving a chain of beautiful lakes. In addition, I can faintly hear the sound of 3,000-foot waterfalls. This is a special place. There is no other way to see this. You have to hike here. You'll have to endure exhaustion, blisters, and pain, while hauling yourself, your sustenance, and your cameras for 8 hours to see this. They say that you appreciate things more when you earn them, and they're right. After crossing yet another shelf, you're close to the falls. If anything, the view only gets better. The falls begin at a melting glacier. This trickle will soon join others, forming the Swiftcurrent River, for at least as long as the glaciers remain. The meltwater converges and begins its journey to the Arctic Ocean. I'm now on the Bullhead Lake Trail, which I've done many times, but from the other direction. Bullhead Lake means that there's only 4, thankfully flat, miles left. But at this point, I'm not stopping for long. I'm much more interested in, well, a comfy chair. I've never seen a bear on this trail, but on one of my first trips I did see bear scat on it. And that was it. So you have to be bear safe. A little further down, when the trickles become a stream, a couple of temporary bridges help you cross. But they're only installed in the summer. The red rock on this part of the trail contrasts rather well with the foliage. It's one of the reasons this is one of my favorite trails. My Bullhead Lake Trail video covers it in great detail. Red Rock Lake is next. Even though I'm pretty worn out, I do tend to take the short detour to the falls. It's another beautiful spot, and while I'd like to spend time to appreciate it, I do so only briefly. Because I'm counting down the miles. 2 to go. I didn't even stop at Fisher Cap Lake to see the moose. All I wanted to do was get to my simple room and get my boots off. And 8 hours after leaving Logan Pass with a lifetime of memories, that's what I did.